and belonging, you stick out like a sore thumb because you're like, so what do y'all doing, y'all?
I used to come home like my jaw is hurting me for speaking serious.
Welcome to the Bare Naked Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Simmons. If you are new to our show, the Bare Naked Podcast is about truth and authenticity. It is about having courageous conversations that cultivate healing, understanding, and transformation. The goal is to really discuss these taboo topics without judgment. So thank you for being here. Welcome to our show. In today's episode, we are going to be discussing two very critical and interrelated topics, and that is abandonment and belonging. We are going to look at the unique intricacies of abandonment. We're going to look at ways in which it's related to belonging. And I couldn't think of anyone better, more fitting to discuss this topic with me today than my sister, my friend. You will love her, Miss Wonder Guannu. So, Wonder, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Doc. I appreciate it, and this is a great opportunity. So, everyone, my name is Wonder. I'm a social worker, and also I'm an accredited immigration representative. And I'm so glad to just have a normal conversation with the doctor tonight. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. Listen, one of the things that got me so excited about you being on the show is the fact that you are a young African woman that it's just, you're brilliant, and conversations that we have, I feel like you're an old soul, like you're wise beyond your years. So I love the work that you do, not just as a social worker, but also within the immigrant population. So before we even get into this issue of abandonment and belonging, can you tell us a little bit about that work?
In order for me to be in this role, I have to carry some form of humility because I work with diverse community, especially those of my kind, Africans and Africans from different countries, Liberia, Guinea, and Ivory Coast, and different part of the world. In addition to that, I have noticed firsthand their experience in navigating the immigration aspect of their time in the US. So, one word I can describe would be humility because it allows me to sit back and like think how grateful, how blessed even I am to have the opportunity that I have, and be in my role. And I just thank God all the time for placing me in there in order to serve and be of assistance.
Yeah, wonderful. Which is all the more reason why I'm grateful you took time out of your busy schedule to be
Yeah.
here to talk to us and to talk to our audience about abandonment and belonging. Those two topics are topics that people are afraid to talk about. It's kind of, as I was preparing for this show, I was reflecting on my own experience of abandonment, and I thought about how I've repressed it for so long that it didn't even occur to me when we decided on abandonment and belonging, that I too have experiences of abandonment. And so it tells you how deeply rooted that is and how much it can be so painful that sometimes we're intentional about, let me just not talk about it. Let me push it far in my subconscious, and I don't have to look at it. I never have to think of it again, except that every now and then it sneaks up in our real life, right? So let's get into it. Let's get into it. When you hear the term abandonment, I guess, what is abandonment to you? How would you define that?
So, yeah, when I think about that word exactly, immediately I think about rejection, right? I think about neglect, not being accepted in a sense, right? Because we all might experience abandonment in so many different fashion. Some people might experience it, but don't know what vocab to label abandonment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they might experience it and don't, don't have any emotional attachment to it.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely neglect and rejection. And through my childhood to now, I can point exact times and instances that I have experienced some form of abandonment and the repercussion of that as well. Yeah. What do
Yeah.
you think that? How will you categorize that?
Yeah, I mean, you said it beautifully. I think the same thing, right? Abandonment is this sense of feeling as though you're undesirable in some way, or you are rejected, neglected in some way, and not really wanted, right? And for whatever reason, it's just this feeling of being left out, being discarded, being let to your own devices, and it does impact us in so many ways. And I'm so glad that you talked about personal experiences, because I want us to transition into that. Because what we know is that abandonment, more often than not, is deeply rooted in our childhood experiences, and that once that foundation has been laid, it can impact how we see the world, how we navigate the world, how we even see ourselves. Our sense of like who we are is impacted when we feel abandoned. And more specifically, abandonment issue is often tied to a sense of like anxious attachment, meaning I'm not quite sure how I'm supposed to attach to someone, and that is rooted in our childhood, where it's like, do I reach for you right now? Do I not reach for you right now? Is it safe to be safe in your arms? Is it not safe to be safe in your arm? When will you leave me? When won't you leave me? So I'm not securely attached in my foundational relationships for one reason or the other. And sometimes it creeps even into adulthood. So to the extent that you feel comfortable, can you share a little bit about your experiences of abandonment, and then how it has impacted you over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope they had a thought about
Mhm.
this previously. Hoping I had to be very careful in how I choose my words because,
Yeah.
I don't want it to be taken, not what I intended it to be.
Mhm.
But when I do remember growing up in Liberia, from what I have heard, that not having a relationship with my mother, of course, she's an incredible person. Just to put that out there, she left me at the age of 3,
Mhm.
right? And I live with not parents, aunties and uncles, and my dad even at some point. But not having that relationship with my mother from age 3, the first time I saw her was age 13. 10 years has passed
Mhm.
since I've seen her. And, but that feeling of, I know she did not intentionally abandon me, in the sense I still had conversations with her over the phone, but that connection was not there, right?
Mhm.
Because at some point I lost that connection with her. Having
Yeah.
conversation on the phone was not enough, because, and also I forgot her face.
Mhm.
Only through pictures they would show me, oh, this is your mother, this is who she is, but that attachment wasn't there. And
Mhm.
when I continued to grow up and go to middle school, if I can put it that way, just celebrating great accomplishments with friends, parents, and my mom wasn't there. Even birthdays, I used to remember, just having experiencing birthdays without her until the age of 13. At 13, when I finally made it to the US, I remember at the airport, she came to hug. I didn't know who she were.
Mhm.
Right when
Yeah.
she hugged me, my response right away was to hug her. But honestly, I didn't have and it saddened me, and I feel bad. I don't know why I feel so much guilt that I didn't have an emotional attachment with
Yeah.
her at that time, because
Mhm.
in my mind I felt, I don't abandon is such a strong word, because of the relationship that I have with her now,
Yeah.
but I felt somewhat emotionally neglected, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Because I didn't experience what other children experience with their parents. And I saw great parental relationship between parents and children. And
Mhm.
I, you know, and I really needed that at that time,
Yeah.
right? And I sadly to say, I used to make up stories in my mind, right?
Mhm.
Create stories, write stories about parental relationships with their children, because at that time that was what I was lacking,
Yeah.
but I didn't know to put a word on it,
Yeah.
right? So when I, you know, met her in when I was 13, and we tried to create a relationship. It was a little bit hard at the
Mhm.
beginning,
Mhm.
but because I didn't know how to act, I didn't know, how a daughter's supposed to act towards her mother,
Mhm.
right? I didn't know how to be a child
Yeah.
towards her in a sense, right? Because being bounced from one auntie to the next, it was a little bit confusing and
Yeah.
conflicting. But I did experience some form of abandonment from a parental perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you for sharing that. We didn't talk about what your story was going to be, but as I
Yeah.
was sitting and listening, I want you to know that like our stories are almost exact, like parallel,
Oh,
like literally. Because when remember earlier I said I had suppressed a certain memory and I didn't even think about it.
oh,
This theme
mhm,
clicked at all until as I was preparing, I'm
mhm.
like, huh. I guess we will share that story. But like
Um,
you being like, I need to watch my words. Like, how exactly am
mhm,
I going to say it? Because the intention is not to make anyone feel bad or guilty or
mhm,
anything. The intention is just to kind of shed light on the experience of it. Because
mhm,
my mom came to the United States when I was 2 years old, and I didn't reconnect with her again until I was 12. So exactly 10 years is like 13, 2, and 12. And it was very difficult to those are formative years.
yes.
Those are formative years, That's when you learn to ride the bike, when you learn how to socialize, when you learn that you want all of that stuff from your mom, when, you want them to be there during critical moments in your life and that, they're not there at that time. And I think, I guess abandonment because of our own culture and it's a hard word to say, but it truly is the feeling, and it's not a personal attack, but it's this feeling of like I've been left alone. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how many people have similar experiences, right? Where they had to go and live. For me, I live with my grandmom, right? And aunts and cousins and all of that, but in the same house. But like how not having a mom, both my parents were here at the age of 2, by the way. So not having a mom and
Mhm,
a dad, and you're with your grandmom and your cousins and all of that. They all did a wonderful job, but there's
yeah.
no substitute for your mom and dad. There just isn't,
Absolutely.
right? And
Yeah.
what I heard from you is just you bravely discussing what that must have felt like. And as a child, making up stories about what that relationship would look like.
Mhm,
It makes sense, right? Because that's something that you desire, that's something that you yearn for.
yeah.
And I think sometimes even when you see other people and you see their relationship with their parents, you want that. You really want that. You're like, wow, I wish my mom was here. I would sing this like old school Liberian song about missing your parent, but I'll
Yeah.
leave it alone for now. But it's just like,
Absolutely.
yeah, you're a kid, and every kid wants their mom or their dad. That
Mhm.
desire is so strong and is there. What was it like you, because you talked about the feeling of growing up and having different experiences, but not having mom there. So was it apparent to you at the time? Like, was it clear to you that, okay, my mom's not here? Was it just kind of glaring, or did it happen at certain moments because someone brought it to your attention, like, oh, mom's not here? What was that?
Maybe around age 10,
Mm-hmm,
it was
mm-hmm.
pretty evident to me that she wasn't physically here, but I
Yeah.
did had some great maternal figures in my life
Mm-hmm,
that did their best. But
mm-hmm,
one thing I would say is those relationships, the time that I spent with my aunties or my dad, it wasn't permanent, it was temporary. So I might
mm-hmm.
live with this aunt for 2 3 years, then after this aunt I have to move to the other aunt
Yeah.
for another 2 3 years, then I have to travel to a whole different country with another aunt for another time and live with my father.
Yeah.
So those moving from one place to the next, it became obvious like my mom isn't here. So
Mm-hmm.
I since she's not here, someone else got to take her place.
Yeah.
But I still felt that longing and emptiness in the sense that something is missing, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't know what it was. I
Yeah.
knew she was missing, but I didn't know why I kept on feeling that feeling that I felt,
Yeah.
uh, in a sense. But my aunties, they did a great job. I live with every single one of them. There are five. I live with all
Wow.
five.
Wow. Wow. At different
All
times during that time period.
different times, different
Wow. Wow.
times.
Wow.
And I think the worst part
Mm-hmm.
that I said, okay, she definitely not here when I went to live with my dad. He's a
Mm.
man, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, So living with them, it was all boys in the house.
Wow.
The only female that we had was either the cook
Mm-hmm.
or this young lady that she resided with us while she was attending. There
Yeah.
was a high school there for children, so I was attending the middle school at Cottington in Bon County.
Mm-hmm.
So living with him, definitely, he's a man. He sits in his room all the time writing
Mm-hmm.
books,
Yeah.
of course.
Mm-hmm.
But what explored me to the maternal relationship, I have a friend. Her name is Scotty.
Mm-hmm.
She's a twin. She has her parents, great parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were so involved, so involved, and I admired their relationship. So that's another exposure that I had.
Mm-hmm.
That is important to have your mother in your
Mm-hmm.
life,
Yeah.
obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. I'm so grateful that you had maternal figures, just to kind of guide you along the way. You touched on some really important themes that I want to discuss. Really, as time permits us, the one thing that you touched on is, going from place to place to place, because your mom wasn't there, right? And even though each of those homes, everyone did the best they could, and they were wonderful caregivers, right? But the issue that kind of sticks out to me is the idea of instability and the impact that instability has on a person, right? Because like
Yeah.
when you're with mom and dad or whomever and you're in the same space for an extended period of time, you can make friends, you can establish long lasting friendships. Okay, we all went to elementary school together and middle school together and college together. But when you are moved from place to place to place, you have to adjust every time to, you know what I mean? Like you have to now make new friends, you got to meet new neighbors, you got to adjust to a new school, new teachers, and that really has an influence and
Mhm.
sometimes a really negative impact on how we develop. So, did you have any challenges with adjusting from place to place to place? Or for you, was it like a smooth transition with each of those moves?
It was a smooth transition, I would say, because I had also had this African mentality that I have to assimilate wherever I go.
Quickly.
I have
Yeah.
to be in place. No, nobody got time for you to have this, thought of, oh, this is not working out. I didn't have any options. The other option was to go to another aunt, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
each aunt, they taught me great lessons. They teach me how to be a woman.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did enjoy those transitions every time they took place. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. One of the blessings that you had was individuals that were there to fill to the best that they can to fill the
Mhm.
gap. Nothing quite fills the void, but
Right.
sometimes people can be a bridge enough. And it sounds like having those individuals who had a positive influence was a really good mediating factor, right? Someone that served as a buffer. Some
Yeah.
people who don't have that really struggle significantly when it
Mhm.
comes to forming healthy relationships because it's never been modeled to them, or when they were abandoned and left with someone else, that person didn't treat them well, that they were mistreated and they were neglected and they were made to feel like they didn't quite fit in, or like you're made to feel like you're some kind of burden. And for
Mm,
those people that have experienced this, I'm a burden to my family because my mom or my dad's not here, it leaves them to always feel as though they're a burden to others. They don't want to be in that space with someone else. They don't really know how to connect with another human being. They're always thinking, oh, are you really interested in me? Or are you just trying to, like, what's your aim? And even to ask, they have a hard time asking to have their needs met. So there's this sense of like, I don't want to say anything. Who's going to want to give me that anyway, right? There's just this like, as if I don't bother anyone, I'm good. To some extent, it sounds like you may have maybe skipped that part or not experienced that to a severe extent. But did any of those things stick out to you? The sense of like, I don't want to be a burden, or I'm starting to feel like a burden, whether it was stated to you or not. Did you feel as though, okay, I'm a burden to my aunt or to my dad or to anyone?
I mean, not then, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely now in my adult life,
Yeah.
I find myself doing everything by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to be a burden to no one. I
Mm-hmm.
rather do it myself, or the one person I will call is my mom, right? Either
Yeah.
she's doing it for me,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm the one doing it. And also, I don't like to ask, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hate to ask people for anything at all. If I do ask you, I have to be so comfortable with you. I
Yeah.
have to build some form of trust with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And if you say no, best believe you will never hear me asking you anything again.
There are a lot of nuggets that you said, and I'm like, oh, I want to follow up on that. So let me just follow up on one that's sticking out to me right now, because you talked about your friend who's a twin, whose mom was a good role model, and I want to talk about the importance of what can serve as a buffer when we feel maybe emotionally abandoned or physically abandoned in some way. And one of those buffers are having a support system beyond maybe mom and dad. And it sounds like your friend's mother was that for you, and you got to see that relationship. And so tell me a little bit about that, and like, how did it help you, if it helped you at all?
I mean, it did to a certain extent because I watched them cook together and I
Mhm.
watched them go to church together, and she will always allow me to come with them. We drove in the same car together and it encouraged me, it allowed me to know that this is what it's supposed to look like. This is what it can become, right? So that I did look forward and fantasize, even about, coming here to the US one day, to have this great relationship with my mother, right? Because I have seen it work, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the many relationship that I have observed that it was healthy. And yeah, it was very impactful, and up to now I still remember it. I still talk to her when she comes to the US at times. When I do go to Liberia, I spend time with them. Still, we're still
Yeah.
close, right?
Yeah.
So
Love it.
it was a great thing. It was a great experience that I witnessed. Before when you speak, I will just share another aspect of abandonment that I've experienced.
Mhm. Absolutely. So I was gonna say, sometimes when we think of abandonment, we think about just the person physically not being there or not being in the same space as us, but that sometimes that abandonment can also be emotional or psychological, and I want to bring it to the foreign parents here in the United States, because something about you talking about your friend's mom being there for you made me reflect on my own memory of like being here. So now I'm here, I'm reconnected with my mom, and we didn't really get to talk about the difficulty in reconnecting, because you feel foreign to the person. They're foreign to you, you're foreign to them. They feel like familiar with you. Maybe they're like my baby, but you're thinking, I don't quite know you like that. And how am I supposed to navigate this relationship? But we'll put a pin in that and circle back to it. But when you talked about your friend's mom, it made me think about how sometimes we can be abandoned even when we're in the same space as the person. So, for
Yes.
example, most of our foreign parents work a lot. They work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, they work around the clock, and their intentions are good. And it's to keep a roof over your head, to pay the bills, and things along that line. But you can be in the same place as someone and feel like, man, they're not there. You're living in the same house, but you don't get to see mom or dad like that because they're always at work. The memory that it brought back for me was, I ran track in high school year. I was really, really good. Like nationals, districts, you name it, right? And I remember thinking to myself, I couldn't think of times when either my parents were at any of my track meets. And I ran like multiple races, right? I did 55, 100, 4 by 1,
Mhm.
4 by 2, the whole long jump, triple jump. Oh, but I
Okay.
distinctly remember every single track meet, my friend Latrice, her parents were there, both her mom and her dad.
Mhm.
And I just admired that so much that they
Mhm.
were both there. They would show up and they were screaming and cheering for them, for her with everything that they had. And I'm like, wow, I wish my parents were like Tracy's mom and dad, which is one of my best friends, like Tracy's mom and dad, and the thing that I loved about them is that they screamed for me just as
Oh,
hard as they did for their daughter,
and that's
and if they were bringing pizza, we all had pizzas, and they just treated us like me and Latrice and my friend Jean. They call us Oreo, like the three of us were always like together. They treated every single one of us the exact same way. Really excellent role model for what it looks like to be present in your child's life, and the reason why I bring up that story is that sometimes abandonment looks like we're in the same space, but I'm not invested in the things that they're doing. Like I don't show up to their graduation because I had to do overtime. Or you can be abandoned from an emotional, psychological kind of space as well. Does that make sense?
It does. It actually makes sense. It's in almost in terms of support, in a
Mm-hmm.
sense,
Mm-hmm.
lack of support. But just to circle back a little bit,
Yeah.
the relationship with my mother, it was tough at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning because, like you
Yeah.
put it, I didn't know you. I don't know you.
Yeah.
I heard you on the phone to say
Yep.
you were my mom, but
Yeah.
I don't have a relationship with you. So at
Mm-hmm.
first, it was a little bit difficult in bonding with her, but
Yeah.
at times went by, she was very supportive. She
Nice.
was very support everything, every endeavor, every accomplishment, everything that I wanted to do.
I love that.
She was there, right? She was there cheering me on, paying for all these things that she shouldn't even be paying for,
Yeah.
right? Even to now, she's the only one I would call to help me to do something for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in terms of support, so I was in this relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
God help. I
God
was
help
in-
me, sis, because now we're talking about adult abandonment. Let's go.
so in terms of support, so I was in grad school.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to get into a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But going to grad school and being in a relationship, it was so hard,
Mm-hmm.
so hard, right? So when I go to class, six p.m. classes, and I'm just hearing my the students in the class
Mm-hmm.
just telling these great stories about how supportive their spouses were, how their family was so supportive, and she would
Mm-hmm.
come home and her husband or boyfriend would do this great thing for her, cook, clean, do all these stuff. Now
Yeah.
I can't even get a phone call.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Right.
I was like, what is going on? I just the lack of support. I was like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, I need, it was so tough. You need that one person, that person that can help you
Yeah.
get through that tough time. And
Mm-hmm.
I needed my boyfriend at that time to be there for me.
Yeah.
Right. And I used to tell him, I said, listen, this thing is hard. I just need when I get out of school, driving home, I just want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing he told me, he's like, you know what? We should just break up. Like stop talking, go to school, graduate, then come back. So what? Okay. This
Wow.
that was it for me. I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
okay. That was another form of abandonment in the sense of I needed your support at this tough time
Yeah.
and you are not here for me. I don't want to say rejected, but I felt neglect. in a
Mm-hmm.
sense. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to go through that grad school alone. Even when difficult thing happened to me, I have to go through it alone. When I was happy, I have to go through it alone. So that's
Mm-hmm.
another form of abandonment. I don't, yeah, it was a
Wow.
tough, and I still remember. It's crazy. I still recall, but yeah. Mm-mm.
That's a tough. Oh my gosh, sis. I'm sorry you had to go through that. For those that have gone to grad school, they know the experience, how difficult grad school is, how
Yes.
taxing it is, how much you need every external support that you possibly can get. Like you need that. And
Yeah.
to be in a position where the person's like the person that you're looking to be like, this
Mhm.
person's got my back, you know. I can come
Yeah.
home, I can cry to them. You gotta write your thesis, then you gotta defend it in front of all these people. You're reading multiple chapters that your brain cannot consume all of. All you need is peace, quiet, support, a nice little massage. You know, you need some TLC. And to hear your partner say, you know what? Just go to grad school, finish. I don't know why I put my Liberian voice on like assuming the person Liberian.
You was like there, so yeah.
Right? All the more reason. Let me see exactly how you would say it. Again, when you finish school, but I know that you stressed right now. You finish
Uh-huh. Yeah.
you stress,
No,
but when you finish, come back.
honestly, nothing from their business right now. Just
Business, my girl. What?
oh my god, I was like, oh my god.
Now that's the ultimate feeling of a bad. Well, so how did you interpret his saying? Like, what was the underlying message? Go to school. When you finish with all that thing, then come back to me. I'll be here. Like, what did you take from that? How did you interpret it?
Honestly, I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
no. Like I felt that in the long run, if I
Mhm.
do stay with you when
Mhm.
tough time comes, you will
Yeah.
not stay.
Hmm.
That was the first thing that came to my mind. Like, I cannot depend on you. I
Yeah.
cannot rely on you. Even though this is just a small beginning right now, this is
Yeah.
just minimal.
Hmm.
But what about the big things that will happen? You are not reliable. That was
Yeah.
my one point. When I had this thought, I was
Hmm.
like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Because if I cannot depend on you, why are you here?
By year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also it's like you want to come around when things are smooth, but you don't want to be there during the difficult time. And ultimately it's almost this sense of like you want the benefits, right? You want to reap the benefits of like, oh, you know, because you get to say, my girlfriend, yeah, she's
Yeah.
got her master's, she went to grad school, she graduated, da, 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 da. But you don't want to be there when it's like they're bawling their eyes out and looking to you for that support. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was
And I
that the
told
last conversation that y'all had, or did you talk later and say, "Listen, it's not going to work"?
No, we that wasn't the last conversation, but I mean, in the long run, maybe
Mhm.
like 3, 4 months later,
Yeah.
we ended things. You know, God
Mhm.
made it happen. God had to take me out of that relationship because I was stubborn too
Yeah.
as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, up to now, I still have a conversation with him because from my mindset right now, I don't hold it against him in a sense.
Yeah.
So I still have a conversation with him and support him 100%. But
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that's a really great way to live. You know, like, it's no, how does it benefit you to harbor any kind of like
mm-mm,
resentment or anything like you can't even live freely, right? Because that keeping yourself in a prison of offense because someone offended you through their action. It's just like, okay, we can be cordial, I can support you and all that stuff. But you know that when you think about partnership, you want someone that will be there. You know, they
mhm,
won't abandon you when things get tough, that they will be there in the good times and the bad times. Like y'all
mhm,
can ride it out together. Yeah,
absolutely. Oh
yeah,
yeah, for
yeah.
sure now.
You know, I feel like this is a really great way to kind of transition into the idea of belonging. You know,
Mm,
because belonging is innate into who we are. It's such an intrinsic, hardwired thing that we all want, right? We want to feel like we belong to a group of people, to a person, to a tribe, to a whatever, right? That like I can fit here and they want me here, that someone wants me here. And so let's talk a little bit about belonging. What does that mean to you? What comes to mind when you think about belonging? And in your opinion, what makes it important to us as human beings?
acceptance. in the sense of belonging. I think it can tie into acceptance. We all have this need to
Mm-hmm.
be accepted and
Yeah.
wanted,
Yeah.
right? In a certain sense. But also, belonging, if belonging can take a negative connotation, if you desire to belong somewhere and you're not accepted,
Yeah.
right? But also, belonging can make you have this sense of peace and rest once you feel accepted. It makes you feel included in the
Yeah.
sense. And
Yeah.
one way I have experienced belonging from a negative way, but we'll go to the positive, of course.
Mm-hmm.
In high school,
We
right?
can talk about both. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in high school. Oh my God. High
Mm-hmm.
school is a tough place to be if you're African. You know the story. We all
Oh
know.
yes, yes, yes.
You have to be tough. But in high school, I was always, people wanted to be friends with me, but at the same time, not. I didn't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to get ridiculed a lot because of
Mm-hmm.
my accent.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
in my thought, you have an accent as well. So I don't understand why my accent is being a problem right now.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like I belong, right?
Yeah.
Because I will always stand out wherever I go. And God always used to place me in places that I was the only Liberian
Mm-hmm.
there. So
Mm.
I felt out of place,
Yeah.
right? I didn't feel like I belong in high school in certain periods.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to play basketball.
Yeah.
In that
Awesome. Okay, girl, I see you.
I used to play basketball at the same time. So not feeling like I belong in that. And I used to be ridiculed a lot, even ostracized because I was African and because of my accent, right? And I felt insecure. That I felt so insecure about my accent. Then that transition to college because I was so insecure and what I experienced in high school.
Yeah.
I avoided classes that I have to give some presentation in.
Wow. Wow.
I'd rather get an F than talk in that class
Oh
because I
my.
feel like once I open my mouth, people will start talking, like rolling their eyes or just I felt so insecure and that carried me through until even now getting certain jobs, you
Yeah.
know, and I used to feel so intimidated to
Yeah.
get certain jobs because I don't want them to hear me. And I feel like, oh God, I'm not trying, I would never try to hide my accent. I love being Liberian.
Yeah.
I 100% tell people I'm Liberian. I'm not trying to be something else. But I also felt like having this accent, you know, is almost like a chain in a sense, right? I felt intimidated to take on certain roles and to just be myself because I didn't think I belonged because I was so different than
Mm-hmm.
everyone else,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Yeah.
yeah.
I really appreciate you honestly for sharing those stories, the negative aspects of belonging, like when you don't feel as though you belong. Because ultimately we want to feel like we're a part of, we want to feel accepted, we want to feel wanted. I again can relate to everything you said. I know for me it was middle school. Middle school was tough, because I came here in oh, you African booty scratcher. Oh, was your pet a monkey and all this like all the crazy things they ask. Now it's like everyone's like pro Africa, but that's a whole other story for another day. But the bullying that took place being African and being Liberian, and our accent is different. Like it's very
Right.
unique to
Mm-hmm.
Liberia, so and when you come here in your mind, oh, I'm gonna fit into the American culture,
Mm-hmm.
and like I'll talk like that. I will speak series like that, screen, and then you come in and your best attempt at series or at
Oh,
like to sound American is like so jacked up. You don't belong. Rather than
oh,
belonging, you stick out like a sore thumb because you're like, so what do y'all doing, y'all?
I used to come home like my jaw is hurting me for speaking serious. I
Like for our non-Liberian viewers, Sirius is like what we call American English because it sounds very much like scree, scree, scree to our ears, you know? But like, yeah, because you come in wanting to belong, and you get bullied for how you sound, for what you wear, and you're trying your best to put on your everything to blend in.
Yes.
And it's not a good feeling at all. It really do it does
Mhm.
get to you. You know, it starts to eat away, quite honestly, at your self-esteem. You start
Mhm.
looking at yourself like, okay, maybe I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough in this space. I don't belong here. Maybe I should be quiet. And it really breaks my heart to even hear you say, like, you would rather take an F, in a class than to go in to have to talk and give a presentation. And that
Mhm.
just shows you the depth of that wound of not belonging and being bullied about who you are. Like, you can't help that. This is, like, as you rightfully stated, to us, you have an
Mhm.
accent, as in they have an accent, right? You don't have an accent to me. Like, you sound very much, that's what I'm used to, but it's the fact that you're in the minority and it's
Mhm.
different. This is where I'm grateful for being a part of a sport team, especially like being a part of a track team, because for me, my
Mhm.
first time feeling like I belonged somewhere was on the track field, being with that group of individuals. And I think our coaches did such a wonderful job making you feel like you were a family, everyone had a sense of like, this is our tribe. You belong here. The sprinters are
Mhm.
like a tight knit. There's a track team, but then there's your sprinter crew, and then your jumping crew, and then your field crew. So you just had a sense of like, this is it. We all belong, and when you have a sense of belonging, you have a higher chance or likelihood of thriving in different aspects of your life, socially, financially, emotionally, even intellectually. So, we heard your not so great aspect of belonging. Do you have a positive experience with feeling like, you know what, I belong in this space, and have you had that at any point in your life?
Um, I would say acceptance in the sense of when I finally accepted who I am, when
Mhm.
I finally embrace who I am, when
Yeah,
I became content with who I am and not
yeah,
allowing outside voices to dictate my emotion in a
hmm,
sense. And also it all came to place and it all made sense when and I'm so glad when I gave my life to Christ,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
2019, when I gave my life to Jesus in 2019, that was a great moment for me,
wow,
you know,
wow,
Jesus, he heals me. He allowed me to understand, you know, the Bible said to know how high, how deep, how wide the love of Christ is. Once
yeah,
he allowed me to embrace that, all
mhm,
those emotions and perceptions and all these thoughts, it faded away. Not all at once, of course.
mhm,
Little by little, it faded
yeah,
away. Now I have a different mindset. I have a different vision and perspective. How I look at abandonment. How I
yeah,
look at belonging. I don't have to belong,
mhm,
right? I can belong in spite or despite. I don't have to. It's not a I don't make it the number one thing that I have to accomplish in a
yeah,
sense. I know that I belong. If I'm not belonging somewhere, it's because God don't want me to be, you
yeah,
know. So
yep,
that's the mentality that I go in a room, in places, in jobs. I'm
mhm,
so proud to be who I am. I'm so proud to be Liberian. I'm so proud to be African. And with God, that's the only person that have made me feel comfortable and know that I belong
yeah,
anywhere, any place,
yeah.
anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even want to add anything because that's such a beautiful, beautiful example of belonging. There's just so much about that. And as you were talking, I think it's worth sharing the how this show, which has such a provocative name, even came about, the Bare Naked podcast. It sounds very much like, what are y'all doing on that show? But I'm glad you talked about the first time, the sense of belonging came from when you gave your life to Christ. Because when the way that the name came about is I was driving one time and just reflective, and all of a sudden I just heard this voice like, my people suffer because they're ashamed to bear naked. And like that was like, and my mind went straight to the Garden of Eden, where like, Adam and Eve had eaten from the fruit and they were hiding, and how they like were like covering themselves from God, right? And it makes a lot of sense, because I think a lot of times in our lives, the topics that we're talking about here is all about the things that we try to cover up, the things that we try to like, we want to clothe. We don't want to like bear naked. We don't want other people to see it. But it's such an incredible experience. It's a liberating experience when you can kind of bear it all and say, these are the things that I struggled with. This is what I'm still struggling with. And this is how I'm coming through. And for
Mm-hmm.
you, it sounds like that moment with Christ was just like, wow, the void that I've been missing, the thing that has really felt like, man, why can't I feel this sense of like oneness, this sense of belonging? It came when you gave your life to Christ, that it was like, I belong to him. I belong here, and that was the first time that you felt this sense of like, wow, so this is what belonging feels like. And and if you're gonna belong anywhere, quite honestly, that's where you want to be. Like I rather belong to Christ,
Yeah.
than anywhere else, than anywhere else, because people are fickle. One minute you're in, the next minute you're out. If they find the next person that's a lot more like, they're like, oh, is she more cool? That's the person they'll go with. But that's not the case when in your relationship with Jesus. Like, he's always there. He's the friend that sticks closer than a brother. You're never like abandoned in him. And so I love that you mentioned that, because it's very much the foundation of this particular podcast, where it's just like, okay, bare naked, let's bear it all. So I can't even tell you enough how grateful I am about all of the things that you've discussed. So what I'll do now is, like, I have two questions. Number one, what helped to cultivate that relationship with your mom to get to a place where it was more comforting and more like, that's my girl, I reach out to her at any moment? And then the final thing is to kind of collectively give some advice to individuals who are feeling abandoned and who want to have this sense of belonging. So let's start with the first one. What helped to cultivate that relationship with mom?
My mother, she's a great person.
Yeah.
She's reliable, she
Nice.
consistent, and she's supportive. So
Nice.
those are the key things that I needed, right? I knew she wasn't gonna leave, right? Because she
Mhm.
was very consistent and she
Mhm.
advocated for me in so many different ways, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that will be some avenues that that create a great relationship for us
Yeah.
until now.
Mhm.
Just and the other question, in reference to what I would say,
Yeah.
is give your life to Christ.
Mhm. Mhm.
Jesus, it might sound cliche to people, but Jesus heals, he delivers, he
Mhm.
will never leave you nor forsake you, right? Definitely give your life to Jesus and find great support system. I think you
Mhm.
mentioned earlier that find people that you can trust. They are out there, even though it's hard
Yeah.
to have that relationship, but it is possible because once you find that bond, you find people that you can trust. All these things seems to disappear, but with time, right? So Jesus and people, it will do the
Yeah.
job.
Yep. And the right people. I love that so much. There's something you said about your relationship with your mom being cultivated because she's consistent, she's reliable, and she's supportive. Whenever we're talking about trying to rebuild, or bounce back or cope with feelings of abandonment, those are the pillars of what you want in people. You want people that are consistent, that are reliable, that are dependable,
Yes.
because then it kind of restores your faith in humanity. It restores your faith in like, oh, okay, so this person's not going to abandon me. They're not just going to leave me. I can trust this person. Why? Because their word is their word, and when they say they're going to do something, they're going to do it. The person is demonstrating to you that you can trust them. And so once that trust is established, once that predictability and that like is there, it makes it easier. I think for me, it wasn't until like later on in my it's now, as maybe I would say the last couple of years, that I feel and I have a deep appreciation for my mother and her sacrifice and things along that line,
Yes.
right? And I think part of that is because like I went straight from high school to college, from college straight to grad school, and there was like really no time to sit and get to know this person and all that. It was literally 12 to 16. You got me, boo, and I'm out of here. It's been real. College and then grad school, and then that's it. And then, but now I have I just appreciate my mom in a whole nother way, and then the sacrifice and who she is and her own experiences, right? And so, I think that should give us some sense of hope, because even if you started out in a position, those that are out there, if you started out in the position where there was this sense of like, oh, I feel abandoned, or I feel like I can't trust this person, or I feel neglected or rejected in some way. There is room to learn how to grow through that. There's room to learn how to establish a healthy relationship. There's room to have the right people in place, including the person that you felt abandoned by. There's room for you to go and rebuild and reestablish and give that person a chance to foster a new relationship that's rooted in trust, that's rooted in consistency, that's rooted in support. So you have to also be open to the idea of reestablishing that. I'm grateful that mom was able to do that for you.
Yes.
As far as advice, I love your advice. Find your faith. For you and I, our faith is in Christ. You mentioned something else, which is have a tribe. Get a group of people together, that your support system is important through all things, through all walks of life. And find people that have similar interests to you. Find people that have different interests from you, that you can learn a new interest, but really to be able to have a group of people. It don't have to be the world, because I'm wary of people who have like 700,000 friends. But like you got to be selective about your crew and have that group of people that they're there for you no matter what. Um,
Yes.
Something else that you said that I want to echo for our audience is the importance of sometimes having a sense of belonging starts with you accepting yourself. you know it's about knowing who you are. It's about loving who you are. It's about knowing that, like, I belong to wonder in this wonderful body, in this space. You know what I'm saying? That's all
Yes.
that matters. Like, I belong here. And when you can get, like, with that sense of internal belonging comes confidence. And when you're confident, you attract the right people with the right mindset that want to help you grow, and that you can help grow as well, right? So you can create this little community of, like, we got a little crew going, and we
Yes.
trust each other, and we can grow together. So those are just some of our advice. We're talking lightly about a really difficult topic, but I think we've talked in depth about the hardness of it. But I think it's also important to understand that there is hope and there's light at the end of the tunnel. And the feeling abandoned is not an easy thing to swallow. Feeling as though you don't belong is not an easy thing to navigate through, but you certainly can first start from looking within, then working out. And yeah, so that's our advice. Any last minute thoughts that you have before we wrap up our show today?
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely. Listen, I am beyond excited that you were here today. It's been a wonderful time speaking to you about abandonment and belonging. Your anecdotes were wonderful. Your personal stories were great. I'm sure a lot of people will find themselves in you. Like, they'll be able to relate to what you said about the feelings that come with abandonment and not belonging, and wanting so desperately to belong somewhere and not quite fitting in. But I can't thank you enough for
Thank
being
you.
on this show today. And I can't wait. I know I know that you all enjoyed something. So listen, if you had the fortune of watching our show and you enjoyed something from it, leave a message in our comment section and let us know what you particularly loved about it, what stuck out to you. And then if you want us to talk about something else that's of interest to you, let us know. So thank you to our audience for joining us. We appreciate you all. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let people know, as we're growing our channel, that we're discussing great things, and we're talking about human suffering and human thriving as well. So if you can follow us, you can like us, you can subscribe anywhere on all your social media platforms at the Bare Naked Pod, including Spotify and YouTube as well. So everywhere, Insta, Spotify, um, Facebook, you can see us, the Bare Naked Pod. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as always, I'll leave you as I do. Be the light that shines in someone else's darkness. Thank you all so much for being here.